and Lambton-Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, after enduring 8 years of this NDP-Liberal government, 1 in 5 households in Ontario are struggling to put food on their tables. That adds up to 2.8 million people, including 700,000 children. This is shocking. This is the highest record numbers that we've ever seen. It's painfully clear that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. So will the Prime Minister tell his appointed senators to stop delaying Bill C-234 and to pass the bill now to bring lower prices for food for all Canadians?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we introduced legislation in this House today which seeks to modernize competition laws to stabilize grocery prices, and we encourage everyone in this chamber to vote in favour, including the member opposite. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I wonder why the party opposite continually votes against measures that aim to make life more affordable for Canadians, whether it is the Canada Child Benefit, whether it is $10 a day childcare, whether it is supports for small businesses. Every single time the party opposite votes against, and it's really difficult to understand what is their plan.
The Honourable Member from Lambton-Kent, Middlesex.
Well, Mr. Speaker, under this government, there's been more people using a food bank than ever before. It's record numbers, and this Prime Minister is responsible for bringing record-level hunger to Ontario. Now, I understand that the self-proclaimed Socialist Environment Minister has threatened to resign if the bill passes, but Canadian farmers need this carve-out immediately. This will make food prices cheaper because if you're taxing farmers who grow the food, you're taxing Canadians who buy the food. So again, will the Prime Minister tell his appointed senators to stop delaying Bill C-234 and pass the bill so we can bring home lower prices for groceries for all Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just start by reminding the members opposite that the Senate is independent, and the only senators that sit in a caucus sit in that Conservative caucus. And I'd add, Mr. Speaker, that farmers understand the importance of fighting climate change and reducing emissions, and I'd thank that farmer for running her last election campaign on pricing carbon. That's why our pollution pricing policy reflects the realities of Canada's agriculture industry. We've spent almost $500 million on R&D and adoption for clean technologies for grain drying. We spent $12 million to reduce methane emissions from cattle, and we've spent $670 million to support the adoption of greenhouse gas reduction practices on farms, and we'll keep supporting farmers because they're key to fighting climate change.
It's usually Wednesdays that people are quite hopped up. It's a little surprising that it's happening today on a Thursday. I ask all members, please, allow the person who has the floor to speak so that we can hear the question and hear the answer. L'honorable député de from Cypress Hills, Grasslands.
Great work, Todd. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that after 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. People see it on their grocery bills, and farmers who grow the food see it while paying for their fuel. A young producer showed me his propane bill for grain drying from the start of harvest. In a span of 12 days, just 12 days, it cost him $950 in carbon tax alone, and harvest was just getting going. He's still waiting to see the final bill from drying his crops. Will the Prime Minister tell his appointed senators to stop delaying Bill C-2, 3, 4, and axe the tax for the farmers who grow our food?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the question. In fact, I know he's a very influential member of his caucus, Mr. Speaker, and people watching would know that. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to give a gift to Canadians before Christmas, why don't he convince his caucus colleagues to vote for affordability bill, Mr. Speaker, because in that bill, Canadians know that we will be reforming competition, one of the most fundamental reform in Canadian history, Mr. Speaker. We're going to give more power to the Contribution Bureau. We're going to make sure that they can do the study, Mr. Speaker. Canadians know that the best way to stabilize price in the country for the mid to long term is to have more competition. Will they do the right thing for Canadians once for all?
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, the fastest way to provide more affordability for Canadians would be to pass Bill C-2, 3, 4. Mr. Speaker, we have the receipts to show just how much the carbon tax costs farmers who grow the food. The natural gas bills for different months from a Saskatchewan farmer show that 1 month without grain drying is $135 a month, but 1 month with grain drying, $6,400. Wow. That's why the House passed Bill C-234 to give farmers tax relief. Who does the Prime Minister think should pay that ridiculous cost? The farmer who grows the food, or the families who are struggling to put food on the table for their kids?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, 2 points. First of all, the only senators that are managed by anyone in this chamber are Conservative senators who sit in the caucus of the Leader of the Opposition. Second point is that if the members opposite were so concerned about food affordability, I would urge them to take a look across the pond at the instability that Vladimir Putin's illegal war is causing to food and supply chains around the planet. Ukraine is traditionally known as the breadbasket of the planet. Food supply issues and the cost of food is directly related to that illegal war. It would be great if the members opposite got behind supports like the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement.
The Honourable Member from Tobique-Matiquac.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Liberals voted with the Bloc to keep the tax on farmers. This bill would have saved farmers nearly $1 billion between now and 2030. This Christmas season, people are hurting. PEI farmers are paying between $30,000 and $75,000 more a year due to the carbon tax, and a farmer in western New Brunswick has had his costs increased by over 30% on freight alone. This is unbearable for our producers and consumers. When will this Prime Minister finally hear the cries of our farmers and tell his senators to pass Bill 234?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the opposition Conservative Party does not have a plan for the environment. Quite simply, on Prince Edward Island, they're well aware of what the environment can do. With Fiona, we had winds of over 200 kilometers an hour. We destroyed burns. It killed dairy cattle. Quite simply, Mr. Speaker, if you do not deal with the climate, you do not do anything with grocery prices. Our government has a plan for the environment, and we will lower and stabilize the grocery prices. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Moose Jaw Lake Centre.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP-Liberal government, everyone is struggling. Farmers across Canada buy their goods retail and sell what they produce wholesale. Farmers are now paying $150,000 in the inflationary carbon tax. They know this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. When will he tell his appointed senators to stop delaying C-234 and axe the tax so people can afford their groceries?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, again, I tell my honourable colleague what his party and his leader needs is a plan for the environment. We have a plan for the environment, and in fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was able to make an announcement in Manitoba with the government in order to create the last living lab right across this country. And in fact, what goes on with living labs is that scientists, farmers, and the industry.
I'm going to ask again, I've asked a couple of times for these colleagues, please keep your voices down when you don't have the floor. It's time for the Minister to answer so that we can all hear the answer. I ask the member from Brantford-Brant, please to do so, and South Shore, St. Margaret's as well, to keep his voice down. The Honourable Minister from the top, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I indicated quite clearly, if you're going to deal with the environment, you have to have a plan for the environment. We have a plan for the environment, and I was just using one of many examples that we have. Living labs right across this country. What we do with living labs is make sure that farmers, scientists, and the industry itself works together in order to make sure we deal with climate change. We produce better crops. We take carbon out of the air and into the soil. We will continue to work with farmers and ranchers right across this country in order to make sure we stabilize food prices right across this country.